I think there is a little bit of a me too in these cloud-based solutions. Why do you think there is so much movement? Or do you know, by the way, you can definitely disagree and say, actually, no, I think there's... So apart from probably Scholar Pack, where I think they have really created a niche, and I think that's a good thing. You know, they haven't tried to add too much functionality. You know, they're basically meeting the needs of primary schools really well. What do you think about all the others? You know, like the Bromcoms, the Arbors, the ISAMs now. You know, do you think they're still quite me too, or what's the driving factor for them winning? Do you think? Because they are winning.
Yeah, they are winning, absolutely, and winning in big numbers. You know, I think many of them will still have the feeling that, you know, capitalist market share is going after, and rightly they should do as well. You know, when it comes to, you know, core MIS as we traditionally know it, there's only so many things a school needs, and it comes back to that, you know, meeting individual school needs, you know, exactly. So if we strip out kind of the, you know, payments, communications, Sims reading cloud, things like that, you know, at its core level, they are not only meeting census requirements, but they are recording those core information about the children, their parents, the teachers, the attendance, assessment, behavior, curriculum, exam results, timetables, and a few other odds and sods as well. Now, there's only so many ways of doing those things. They can be prettier, they can be easier, and so a lot of people will be going after, you know, that ease of use. Absolutely, they could do. Many of them I have seen have started to go kind of into the kind of the workflow environment. How do we automate tools? How do we automate things and things like that? But at its core level, there's still only so much that you can do. So all of those organizations, you know, have built it up. They've clearly achieved what they have achieved. So now they're going to be looking at, where do we go next? So it's right now, just in core MIS, it's a war of attrition. Every school has one, so we're only going to go and win it off of those guys and those guys. And so now with so many more schools looking at the options and changing, and movement between MIS happens, it's not something that schools are going to want to do every year or every couple of years. 5 years, maybe 3 years at the end of a contract, be more likely at 5 years plus. Yeah. So it's a war of attrition. And maybe we'll reach a point whereby you know, schools can move even easier, maybe at a click of a button. We all hope one day. But you know, it's going to be a point whereby they were on Sims, they've moved to Bromcom, they've moved to Arbor. Do they move to ISAMs, or do they go back to Sims, or what's the point in moving again? We've tried all the options. We are happy. Does it now come down to price? Maybe. What it's going to come down to is, what else do they do? So what we've seen now is, you know, the likes of Arbor, Bromcom in particular, they've now started to go after the other subsystems. So systems that usually have been my home, you know, communication systems, payment systems. In olden days, you know, in 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, these systems were the dark arts. They were left to the specialists, particularly payments. Payments, no one wanted to go after payments because it was always really, A, tricky, and B, oh, it's money. We don't want to touch money, all the legislation that goes behind that. And what if we get it wrong? You know, it's money. We're in 2019, 2020 now, and it's so much easier to do. You know, to do payments is a fairly trivial task now, because there's so many third parties that do all of the legwork for you. The economies of scale that comes with all of that, and so that's a much easier thing to go after. And so because of that, the graphic I've always kind of used for this is, you kind of got MIS is there as a blob, and then you've got communications, and then you've got payments, and then you've got assessment, and then other bits and pieces. And what's happened is the MIS's blob is just going bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger to now encompass some of those other blobs. And then what's happened is those specialist providers have then had to go, well, we've got to get bigger as well. We've got to now do communications. We've got to do resources. We've got to do parents' evenings and room booking systems, things like that, because A, we need more things to sell. B, we've got to compete. And now they're having to compete with the MIS systems as well, which they've never previously had to do. And it's opening up a very, very interesting dynamic for those third parties as well, because previously they were always very much, oh, we'll work with everybody, because every school has to have an MIS. We know the dynamic of a the market is they all want the data out of the MIS via a group call or a wand or somebody like that, to get that data out. And then all of a sudden, those payment systems and communication systems, they're working with the Bromcoms and the Arbors, but those people are also their competitors as well, because they're going out to the schools and saying, well, we have payments as well. Okay, it's not up there with your parent pays and your two classes in terms of depth of product, but to be honest, it doesn't need to be. You know, as long as you can get the money into the school, for many schools that's enough.
Yeah.
And so where it started out, you know, everybody moving to cloud for MIS and that me too. Now they're all looking at, well, actually, what are the complete administrative systems that are now available from these MIS providers? Iris are really very interesting now with ISAMs that they've just purchased. They've got an incredibly compelling whole school administration system from front to back. You know, that includes payments with parent mail and their payment system. You know, they've got BioStore in there now for their cashless catering elements and their authentication pieces. So there's a lot that they've got there that covers everything, all on one kind of balance, on one invoice that they can provide to a school in one solution. You know, up there with what Sims has had for such a long time. You could go to Capita with Sims and you could get nearly everything that you needed for an administration from them. Yeah. And so the likes of Arbor, Bromcom will be watching that as well and seeing what other areas that they can expand into to offer those schools more things.
I think you're absolutely right. You know, Ali already sort of talks about the one-stop shop. You know, and I think, you know, when we did some analysis with MATs, there are lots of MATs out there who want to consolidate their systems. Yeah. Mainly because it gives them the opportunity to challenge the price and everything else, because they can say, right, you can have all these schools for all that system for X. You know, and I think that's why Ali's done quite well with the bigger ones. And actually, Arbor is now also being as successful with those bigger ones, you know, consolidating primary, secondary, having the same solution, and actually being able to bring in these other solutions. And I agree, I think Iris are in a really powerful position, because where before, like they had PS Financials, which I think they've now rebranded as RS Financials.
PS Financials, of course, yeah, as well.
And that's in 70% of most academies. You know, you sort of go, well, do you know, it doesn't take much to sort of go, what about just buying all these other things off us as well? So I think RS is in a really powerful position. When they get the proposition right, I think it's going to be a really strong proposition, just for those same reasons. But then you look at the other side of it, which we talked about just a few minutes ago, about, you know, making sure it's easy to embed, and making sure, you know, that basically there is some additional services to ensure that people are getting the most out of it. And then you look at Arbor and ScholarPack, especially now they've got the key. You know, the key could be their driver almost into these schools, because again, they've got a good market reach. So you can easily see them going, well, actually, if you want to make the most of your data, we can do that for you, but you need one of these systems, you know, this Arbor or this ScholarPack system in your school as well, because we know it really, really well. We can use that data, blah, 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 blah. But actually, they're all coming from different perspectives. It's interesting.
Absolutely. And as well, we come back to that kind of that cost of change and that supportability of all of those as well. You know, it's another reason why MATs are, you know, that wide scale move for MATs as well is so important, because then they've only got one or maybe two systems that they need to manage. You know, a few years ago, I was doing a little bit of work with ARC, and, you know, and they were looking at exactly the same thing, trying to streamline their the number of products they've got, not just you know, consolidating down to one MIS, but looking at saying, well, actually, do we need to have 4 systems that maybe relate to payments? Not you know, we've got parent pay, but actually we have a finance system and we have a PS Financials at the back end and things like that. Well, actually, can we have one system or maybe 2 that consolidates the number of products that we've got, and then roll that out to across all those schools? Because to be honest, managing relationships with vendors is hard work, and managing the supportability of those. You know, we look at you know, support teams within local authorities as well. So many years, all they wanted to look after was Sims, maybe a bit of RM and a bit of CMIS or Progresso at the time. Now, you know, they're all going after all of them. They've got support teams, the ones that are left. They've got support teams for Arbor. They got them for ScholarPack. They got them for Bromcom, I believe. And so, you know, that supportability is just so important as well to have.
Massively, I totally agree. You know, obviously, I know a number of the sports teams from where I come from, But it is definitely changing. Again, it comes back to that trust element. You know, whoever well, we know who probably will buy Sims, but when they buy them, and whoever is in control, you know, whatever they do, the one thing they have to do is build back that trust element. Because at that moment, you know, I think there's still some loyalty there. It's in small pockets, but there is some loyalty there. It's just a case of going, do you know what? But the trouble is, you've just messed us around, as you said at the very beginning. You messed us around. You know, you promised and promised and promised and promised, never delivered, never delivered. You know, and basically the trust is lost. And I think then the commercial support teams first of all went, well, we need to now support other. You know, for our own safety, we need to support other products, and that includes finance and other things. And I think they will start to expand, and I think it will change from just being MIS to, you know, what is the administration looking like? You know, what is that big piece? So everything you just said, yeah, I totally agree. Now, anybody who wants to survive, the support teams are going to have to start doing multi-support and looking at multiple solutions in the sense of the HR, the finance, and all that sort of stuff. I think that's exactly where they all need to go.
Yeah.
But there'll be fewer of them, though, I think, because of that. So that's the market.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the market. Cool. So if you're going to basically sort of predict, so where you think it's where the market's going to go, so where do you think the future of MIS? I think we probably touched on something with the data actually, but where do you sit to see them more consolidating, creating more services, building a bigger solutions? I'm guessing that's where you believe it's all going to.
Yeah, I think the days of MIS systems being old school MIS are gone. I think that they will start to include more and more systems, more of those specialist systems, as I say, that used to be a dark art. They will all fall under the same wings, within the same platforms. They might not be the specialists, but what's very interesting as well, of course, is that these bigger companies that are buying all of the systems up as well. You know, there's not many left now. In fact, it's only Brom. If we assume that, well, Capita's already a big organisation, but they'll be bought out. You know, if outside of that, it's really only Bromcom are the only ones that are left that aren't part of a much larger organisation or have been bought up by, you know, massive corporates, you know, in that way. And they're not just buying MISs, they're buying other systems as well. So all of what have been traditionally you know, separate, you know, small businesses, you know, a few thousand customers here and there. Over the last 5 years, they've all been bought up. They've all been amalgamated in. You know, the biggest, you know, independent one is probably Parent Pay, you know, in terms of their kind of size and reach and whatnot. You know, they've bought ScholarPack, they've bought ScholarPack, sorry, they bought Schoolcoms, okay, right, and they've bought up SciPad as well. And you know, they're looking really, really great, you know, in terms of holding their own, as it were. But to be honest, in terms of the numbers that are flying around for some of these big organisations, could still be bought up for a good few million easily, and be amalgamated into one of the bigger ones. And anybody that buys Parent Pay, well, that's a very interesting purchase if they did that. So I think you know, MIS will consolidate. I think the players that we have got now will largely be here for a good number of years. Progresso, I'm not sure if they're going to survive for very long. I think they're not even called Progresso anymore, are they? They're called
well, I think it's still Advanced Progresso, isn't it? Or Advanced something. Or maybe
advanced something that they're called. But you know, Capita will be bought, and hopefully we'll see Sims Primary then kind of enter the market properly. ScholarPack and Arbor will, I would predict over the years, will start to merge into kind of one brand, I would at least. And the others are kind of being bought up and then amalgamated into the other products that they have got. So their bubbles will continue to expand across all of the administrative areas, just as they are now. They might even start to, you know, expand into the kind of teaching areas as well. We've seen the likes of products such as like Mint Class, class charts, things like that, homework systems such as Show My Homework, Milk, places like that, that are now offering very, very classroom-based systems compared to the administrative systems that have all been bought up left, right, and centre. They'll be the next avenues. We've seen Arbor now doing classroom seating, So they're hitting that market as well. Many of them have been trying to play with kind of the homework kind of concept, particularly this year as well. So now they're going to move much more into the classroom as well, and once they've got that, they're a whole school solution. So it's going to be an element of consolidation in terms of the companies and vendors and products, but I think it's a much greater consolidation in terms of these single products will then be even more modularized in terms of providing more functionality, more systems, more features to the various aspects of their schools.